Whenever a man truly rises, when his career leaps forward, when his body and mind reach a state of absolute focus, something strange happens. A kind of invisible vibration, like a shock wave, radiates from his new position and directly affects the people around him, especially those who are sensitive to shifts in social power. Science calls this phenomenon status sensitivity, an ancient mechanism in the human brain that makes us react strongly when someone climbs to a new level of value. And at that very moment, reciprocal emotions begin to appear. There is surprise, there is admiration, but sometimes, accompanied by it, is an unexplainable sense of unease, as if your new status is pulling them out of their emotional comfort zone. This isn't something everyone understands, and it isn't something everyone dares to admit. You're about to step into a realm of knowledge most people avoid, a realm where evolutionary psychology, social defense instincts, and a man's rising energy intersect, forming silent but incredibly powerful shifts. Take a deep breath, because from this point forward, everything you think you know about attraction, about emotional reactions, about ascension, will flip. You're opening a door that most men never touch, and from the moment you open that door, we enter a deeper layer of the secret, a layer that evolutionary science has spoken about for a very long time, yet modern humans often overlook. This part cannot be separated from the previous one, because if the first part is the phenomenon, then the second part is the cause. According to evolutionary psychology, attraction is not just a fleeting emotion, but an instinct programmed through hundreds of thousands of years of survival. Humans, especially women in ancient evolutionary environments, have always been drawn to men who display stability, strength, and the ability to generate resources. Those signals once meant safety, the survival of the family, the ability to endure long winters and sudden threats. But behind that attraction, there exists a second mechanism more subtle, less mentioned, yet equally powerful. Science calls it mate value anxiety, a state in which, when a man becomes too outstanding, too successful, too noticed, the other person's brain activates a deep-rooted alert, the fear of being left behind. This is not a flaw. This is an ancient social defense mechanism, a warning system that helped our ancestors detect when power dynamics within a group were shifting, so they could adjust their strategy and avoid losing advantage. When a man steps onto a new rung of value, two forces appear simultaneously, a pulling force attraction toward his strength, ambition, and clear direction, and a pushing force the concern that he now has more opportunities, more options, more divergent paths. This push-pull combination creates emotional reactions many people cannot explain, sometimes minor tests, sometimes a desire for control, sometimes a fleeting uneasiness that is subtle yet strong enough to change behaviour. This is a realm of knowledge that very few can explain thoroughly, a place where the evolutionary brain meets modern society, a place where instinct overlaps with logic, and it is also the reason why many reactions in relationships do not come from rational thought, but from a much deeper layer of programming. Once you understand this mechanism, you will see the entire game differently, as if someone just turned on the light in a room where you had always been forced to navigate in the dark. Once you understand the push-pull forces of evolutionary psychology, you will begin to notice a deeper layer of transformation waiting ahead. And from that very point of intersection, we enter the third phenomenon, where the initial attraction doesn't disappear, but transforms into a form of invisible pressure. Social science calls this value gap stress, a state that arises when the value gap between two people widens faster than their emotional adaptation can keep up. When one person advances too quickly, the other's brain can fall into an unfamiliar space, a place where they are drawn to your light, yet simultaneously confused because they no longer know where their position will be in this new picture. Numerous sociological studies show that when a boyfriend reaches a breakthrough, some women or any romantic partner in a similar position may unconsciously respond by checking limits or testing stability. This is not a power game. It is the brain's way of recalibrating the safety of the bond. In psychology, this is considered a behaviour of revalidating status, similar to how our ancestors reassessed each other's roles in prehistoric group life whenever someone achieved something new. What makes this phenomenon so uncanny is its subtlety. Many tests you think are random, a casual question, a deliberate silence, a reaction slightly sharper than usual, are actually ancient psychological rituals activated from the subconscious to assess whether you are still grounded, still reliable, still in control of your own world. When value gap stress appears, emotions can distort from admiration to confusion, from trust to scrutiny, from closeness to mild challenge. Not because they want to make things difficult for you, but because they are trying to relocate their stable position in the new picture you have stepped into, and it is here that the game becomes more intriguing than ever. Because once you understand the hidden movements within this phenomenon, you will clearly see one thing. It's not your success that creates problems. It's the way both nervous systems are scrambling to adapt to a change that happened faster than usual. And from this point, we enter the next layer of the secret, where emotional power and the active role begin revealing their true form. When you have seen the emotional transformation from attraction to scrutiny that value gap stress creates, you will begin to recognize an even deeper law operating beneath the surface. From here, we step directly into the fourth secret layer, where every relationship follows an order that appears invisible, yet in reality governs even the smallest behaviors. Modern science calls it relationship power dynamics. While ancient texts summarized it in a single sentence, every bond has a balance, and those who do not understand the balance will be crushed by it. In any relationship, when one person rises too quickly while the other has not yet adapted, their nervous system activates a natural defensive response. Sometimes it manifests as withdrawal, as if they need space to rediscover a sense of safety. Sometimes it shows as a brief moment of irritation, not because you did anything wrong, but because they are trying to piece together their place in a picture that is changing too rapidly. Some choose strategic silence, not to create pressure, but to observe whether you still maintain the same internal stability you once had. Others unconsciously compete for influence through subtle behaviors, proposing decisions, controlling schedules, or creating emotional anchors to pull the balance back. These reactions are not anyone's fault. They are the natural consequence of a relationship's power balance shifting too quickly. Since ancient times, the human brain has been wired to detect any instability that could affect group cohesion. When your status rises, the relationship must restructure itself to accommodate the new version of you. What makes this phenomenon feel mystical is the way it unfolds quietly, slowly, like the movement of an enormous gear whose presence you sense by faint sounds, but never actually see turning. And if you pay close attention, you will notice that power in a relationship is not something someone holds through words, but something established through energy, through the ability to stay grounded regardless of shifting circumstances. This is a secret very few are taught, because most people only look at the surface of emotions, rather than the hidden axis underneath. And once you understand the law that governs this balance, you move into the next level of awareness where the game is no longer about reacting to emotions, but about leading the entire rhythm of the connection. When you understand how the balance of power operates, you will begin to see the next truth. It is not only the emotions within the relationship that shift, but also the way a person sees themselves. And from that very place, we enter the fifth layer, the layer of social contrast effect. In modern psychology, this is the core of social comparison theory, where people unconsciously compare themselves to those closest to them. When you reach a major milestone, level up, mature, or suddenly become prominent, your success is not just success. It becomes a mirror reflecting back onto the person beside you. For many, that mirror is inspiring. But for others, the brain activates a very different response: fear of replacement. The fear of being left behind when your status rises too quickly. They won't say it. No one says it. But in the moment they see you step into a new level, a natural question appears in their subconscious. Why am I standing still? Am I still good enough? Can I keep up? This backward reflection sometimes causes the other person to respond not with pure joy, but with confusion, defensiveness, or silence. Not because they want to dim your momentum, but because they are confronting their own internal insecurity. When you rise too quickly, their social comparison system becomes overstimulated, and they need time to rebuild their internal value map. And this moment becomes the intersection of inspiration, insecurity, and hope. Three psychological forces pulling in different directions. The danger is that if you fail to recognize this signal, you lose your position of agency immediately, because the mirror you unintentionally create can turn into an emotional whirlpool if misunderstood. But if you see it and understand how it operates, you maintain the position of the leader, the one who not only rises but also steers the emotional current surrounding his own success. When you have seen how your success becomes a mirror reflecting into someone else's emotions, you will begin to ask yourself, is there a way to keep that emotional picture stable, so you don't get pulled into the whirlpool of comparison and insecurity? Right at that boundary, we step into the sixth layer, the layer of frame control. This is the layer that only a very small percentage of men truly understand and apply. In communication science, a frame is the perceptual lens that shapes how people interpret situations, emotions, and meaning. And frame dominance is the ability to maintain that lens regardless of external influence. Put simply, the one who holds the frame is the one who leads the emotional direction of the interaction. The one who loses the frame is the one who gets pulled into someone else's emotions. When a man loses his frame, every signal of insecurity around him, whether intentional or not, can pull him down, causing him to react instead of lead. And that opens the door for continuous tests, a question sharper than usual, a scrutinizing glance, a comment with hidden implications, not because anyone wants to make things difficult for him, but because the other person is checking whether he is still the stable anchor he once was. On the other hand, when you keep your frame steady like a straight line cutting through chaos, you create a field of stabilizing energy that makes the person beside you feel safe in a very primal way. They sense that you're not shaken by the world, and immediately, tests decrease, tension dissolves, respect rises. Frame control is not a psychological trick. It is the central operating system of presence. It is the ability to position your own emotions before positioning someone else's. It is the reason why 1% of men enter a room and the atmosphere shifts, while the remaining 99% are shifted by the atmosphere. What makes this technique so classified is that most people interact reactively, not intentionally. They allow others to pull their frame without realizing the game was tilted from the very first second. But when you understand this principle, you begin to notice things you once thought were random small tests, deliberate silences, subtle nudges on your emotions. All of them are society's way of searching for a point of stability. And if you are the one holding the frame, you are that point of stability. From here, we are standing right at the door of the final layer where success, emotion, and power merge into a new identity. A layer where, once you enter, the way you operate every relationship changes completely. When you have seen that true power lies in the ability to hold the frame, you will realize something even deeper. The problem was never your success. It only appears when you don't understand the psychological layers operating around your rise, and the moment you recognize this, we step into the final layer, the layer of the male growth law. This is where every relationship automatically restructures itself when you evolve into a new version of yourself. When you rise, your world expands. And when your world expands, the connections around you must change shape to fit. This law is not resisting you. It is simply reflecting your transformation. To pass through this layer, you need 3 supreme principles. First, maintain your personal growth rhythm as a separate lane, not allowing someone else's emotions to pull you off course. Second, communicate with a clear, calm frame so the other person feels safe amidst your changes. Third, create co-growth instead of a value gap by inviting the person beside you to step into the journey of development with you, instead of leaving them outside watching you move too far ahead. When you understand this law, you will see that changes in a relationship are not a negative sign, but proof that you are expanding your energy. And when you master these 7 layers of the psychological code, you step into a world that 99% of men will never reach.